Welcome everyone to Into the Wild League, Week 3, Game 1. We have a great matinee today. We've got Danny Donuts facing off against JonahRah. Of course, casting with me today is Ken Sanity. Ken, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great, man. Happy Labor Day? Is it Labor Day?
It is
Do they
Labor Day.
celebrate Labor Day in Canada?
They do. We work just as
Oh,
hard as, if not harder than our neighbors to the south. So we too
wow.
get Labor Day off as well. So happily, I'm able to join you today and cast this
Yeah.
fantastic game because I don't have to work.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. We got a good matchup, like you said. Danny Donuts versus Jonah Rah. Here for this is week 3 of the Into the Wild Hearthstone League. Um, so let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the rules.
Absolutely.
So the league utilizes the innovative format introduced by the United Hearthstone League. If you've been watching the past 2 weeks, you're familiar. Matches are played once per week in a best-of-5 format, where players are required to win with all 3 classes to achieve victory. Every other week, there will be a deck-building challenge with unique rules. This week is a normal week, though. Players are required to bring all 9 classes, 3 per week, and there are no bans. Um, in week 1, players chose 3 classes. In week 2, they chose another 3 classes out of the remaining 6. And in this final week of the first round, the players are bringing the remaining 3 classes. So once a class has been selected for use in a particular week, that class may not be used until all remaining classes have been selected, even if the player did not get to use that class in his or her matches. So we're going to see Danny and JonahRah's final decks today, and it should be a doozy.
Yeah, this is the kind of the bottom of the end of the line. The 3 classes that you've been avoiding have to be selected. What's really great about this is that it does get to feature maybe some lesser played classes, some alternate strategies, and both Danny and Jonah are known for their innovative deck building and high level gameplay. So I have no doubt that they're going to have some interesting choices this week for our viewing pleasure. So I'm going to go ahead and give them the signal to get into game 1.
Sure.
Apologies while I do that really quickly, and then we will get started.
And we got to see the deck lists already, and they look to be pretty fun decks. I actually expected Danny to save Druid for this week, but I guess he played it on the conditional week where there were certain rules, right? Because I was like, okay, Danny's going to play Star Aligner either on week 1 or week 3, but he didn't. So I'm kind of bummed about that. But hey, if you're playing on the ladder, you're probably tired of seeing a lot of Star Aligner Druid. Danny does have 3 really great decks lined up, and so does JonahRah. This should be interesting how these matchups play out.
Yes, I have been getting absolutely wrecked by Starliner Druid. Turn 6, turn 7, 1 turn KOs, even when playing aggressive decks, very difficult. So we are getting into game 1 here. And we
All
have
right.
Danny's Kingsbane Rogue versus Jonah's... hang on just a moment.
Oh, okay.
There we go. Looks like some sort of control paladin with Ziliax. So maybe a control mech paladin?
Yeah, looks that way.
Very cool.
This will be an interesting matchup. Like Danny's going to be able to pop out Kings of Bane early, which is always a nice thing. And Jonah decides to tempo out the Wild Pyro. I guess he realizes that Kingsbane really doesn't have a lot of threats that they're going to throw out on board. So he just wants to build some kind of board presence.
Yeah, Jonah realizing that he is going to have to be the aggressor in this match, put early pressure on Danny before he can build a big Kingsbane with lots of attack and lifesteal. I think this is going to be a pretty tough matchup. Kingsbane does punish slower controlling decks quite hard, And while we haven't seen everything that Jonah has to offer, it does look like with that N'Zoth and Solemn Vigil that he is playing a little bit more of a top-heavy list.
Oh, Shadow Step is going to be nice, especially with the Dirty Rat. Um, and Danny's actually got a really good hand. He's got Prep, Vanish, double Dirty Rats. He's got a lot of different options here, but JonahRah does have a nice curve. He's getting to play stuff on curve, which is always a good thing.
Yep, Danny does have a Vanish, so he will be able to answer this board state in 2 turns, but, Vanish is a temporary measure. If Jonah's able to recapture the board quickly, this could be how Jonah, ekes out a win here against this deck, is just by going face, putting all that pressure on, and we are seeing him execute that game plan quite handedly here.
Yeah, very true. But also remember, guys, this is the Conquest format, so even if Danny loses here, uh, he can still play the Kingsbane Rogue, and there's a good chance that one of these matchups is very favorable for Kingsbane, considering the type of lineup that JonahRah has brought today.
So Danny coining out that Vanish to deal with the board. It is unfortunate that he does not have a Cold Light Oracle, Danny, to follow up with to start burning cards. That would have been especially nice with those Shadow Steps. So even though this is a bit of a setback for Jonah, we are going to see that board be reestablished. And this time, Danny really doesn't have an answer.
Yeah.
With that Tinker Sharp Sword oil, he may be able to start trading, however, which, he's already at 16 health, and without lifesteal, his life as a resource is is at a fair premium. So, looks like he's going to opt to use Doomerang to clear the board and put that Kingsbane back in his hand. So doing his best to try and not let this board run away from him. But I think it's going to get a lot tougher unless Danny draws into Cold Light Oracle and soon.
Yeah, he definitely needs some card draw at this point. But for now, he's content to just play some tempo removal or tempo bounce and try to get some damage in.
Smash face for 7. I think Danny realizes that he has to put Jonah on the clock if he's going to win here, playing off the top of his deck. And,
Yep.
that taunt minion, even though it's fairly unassuming, Danny's used a lot of his removal tools in the form of saps and vanish. He may not be able to break through.
Well, there are some cold lights. Might be too little too late at this point, though. Because JonahRah has a ton of taunts. I mean, his Ziliax.
Yeah, that's true. But
He's
where
got a
there's a Kingsbane, there's always a way. One would be unwise to discount the
that is
ability for
true.
this deck to steal games, but I agree. Jonah recognized his win condition early, put a lot of pressure to bear, and hopefully he's hoping now that he can close the game out. But Danny's starting to get that draw engine going,
Yep.
starting to get his tools online. I wouldn't count Danny out just yet. This is where the deck really starts to get dangerous. There's the Leeching Poison,
Oh wow.
going to be able to heal up 8 points of health if he trades into that Stonehill Defender. This is actually looking like a potential comeback scenario here. Although Jonah has lots of tools, including that N'Zoth and Ziliax in hand, so hard for me to predict one way or another, but definitely this is the position that Danny wants to see himself in. Might have taken an
Oh,
extra turn or two to get there, but looks like he's getting there.
definitely, definitely a big turn where he got those cold light oracles off of the minstrel, and he got the life leech. So huge turn for him.
Yeah, that 3/7 Divine Shield, Taunt, Lifesteal, and Egg in one is a pretty scary looking minion. One thing that Jonah can do is use his magnetic minions without much fear of vanish and saps, because Danny had to play those quite early on to stabilize. So
Yeah.
this is going to allow Jonah to develop threatening board states that Danny may not be able to answer outside of smashing them repeatedly with Kingsbane. So the question is, can Jonah slug it out at this point, and continue to apply pressure? And we got a game here. This is great.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So Danny choosing to draw a couple more cards here. Maybe saving the Cavern Shiny Finder for possible weapon removal. I mean, it's worth it here. Like, even if he leaves the 8/8 on board, it's still a positive gain, net gain in
Oh,
life. So,
and Jonah concedes.
wow, Danny taking a quick game. Danny's games always turn out like that. He's always either behind and then he catches up from what seemed like an unsurmountable odd, or he's ahead and his opponents miraculously come back as well. So that was a great game one, which means that Kingsbane Rogue is off the menu for Danny, and he's going to have to succeed with the other two decks which he brought today, Hunter and I don't remember the other list. But
And just to see how swingy that game was for astute viewers that probably saw me switching the crown and stars on that flare screen, I thought Jonah had it, and I was getting prepared to call it. And just when that draw engine got online, that's all it took for Danny to stabilize. Kingsbane showing itself why it's such a dangerous strategy. It
yeah,
has such a keen ability to steal games and leave casters such as myself completely befuddled.
and me too. Yeah, I am. I definitely have my foot in my mouth because that I was not expecting that. The tides turned so quickly once he had the double Oracle and the Life Leech. It was just a different game.
So do you think that Jonah's going to opt to queue with that Paladin deck now that he got that control killer out of the way of the Kingsbane, or do you think that Jonah's going to opt to bring a different deck into Danny's lineup?
I think you bring the Paladin deck just because it's a known. Uh, you still get to hide your other two decks, and you don't know what Danny's going to bring. So, bring the Paladin deck. Danny already knows what it looks like. See what Danny brings, and then you can counter Q after that game, or maybe you take the game with the control Paladin, right?
So I just sent the signal to Danny and Jonah. They can go ahead and start game two. So while they make their selections, I'm wondering what deck Danny will opt to bring now. So he's got a mage, and oh, there we go. We're going to find out in just a quick moment here.
Hunter versus Druid.
Secret Hunter versus a more value-oriented Jade Druid.
Well, I tell you what, JonahRah's got a pretty nice hand.
Yep, Wild Growth on two. Wild Growth Gamer is best gamer.
Yeah, but Danny has a great hand too. Look, he has two secrets. He has uh, the Emerald Spellstone,
And now the Cloaked Huntress.
and now a Cloaked Huntress. Wow.
So this Secret Hunter list is a fair staple in the standard metagame. It can be seen quite often on Wild Ladder as well. Has a really threatening opening with efficient secrets, and that Spellstone, if you can get it up on curve, is really hard to deal with.
Yeah, definitely.
Jade Druid obviously has an ability to ramp, stabilize, and run away with the game as well. So Danny's clearly the aggressor in this matchup. Um, you know, um, both players have good starts. I'd say that this is anyone's game, and after last game, I'm going to not predict a winner at my own peril. So
Jonah using a lot of mana ramp there. He had a great curve.
Yeah, and he's sitting on the ultimate infestation as well, so he's not in a position to have to consider whether he needs to draw off the nourish or not. He's going to take that ramp and UI on 10, which is such a critical win condition for this deck.
Definitely. But Danny's got a great curve here, and he's just playing this deck out just on curve. He's obviously gonna play out the Emerald Spellstone here.
Yeah, full Spellstone on 5 is fantastic, although what he doesn't know is that Jonah is sitting on Spreading Plague, which unfortunately is a natural counter to this wide strategy. Jonah's doing something interesting here. It looks like he's going to opt to play Malfurion first, and he may have even spoken about this on the Into the Wild podcast, or maybe it was another player, but oftentimes playing Malfurion first is a very good strategy before Spreading Plague, because it oftentimes encourages your opponent to even further go wide, further commit, so you
Yep.
can get a full board of Scarabs off the Plague. So
Yep.
good choices on Jonah's part here, looking to stabilize.
Also with sustain, the hero power, it's an improved hero power, so that's more turns that you get more value out of the hero power should you choose to only hero power, which is smart.
Yeah, oftentimes players such as myself try to hold on to that Death Knight for too long, and every turn you haven't played it is a turn where you're not utilizing that heavily upgraded hero power. Wow, opting to give his minions +1 attack, looking to really aggressively seize the board from Danny here.
Oh
Oh,
wow,
wow.
that's
And there's the
the
Mossy
master
Horde
of
tech
all.
choice. Wow. Uh, we're playing a closed deck list tournament here, so Jonah
Yep.
couldn't have known that Danny was playing the Mossy Horror. That's a common tech choice these days in Standard. Most Wild Secret Hunter lists are opting to run Professor Putricide. I do believe that Danny did opt to replace the Professor with the Mossy Horror, and certainly
Ah.
Danny is being rewarded for that tech choice.
But even with that tempo swing, JonahRah is still not in a bad situation. He has a full hand of gas. He's at 28 health.
He's got lots of healing with that Ferocious Howl.
Yep.
Some removal, it looks like. Yeah, definitely this game is far from over.
I mean, Ferocious Howl is just, there's double Ferocious Howl. Like, it is such a crazy card. I mean, it pretty much just negated this turn worth of damage. It's basically like he told uh, Danny, hey, you know what? Why don't you skip a turn?
Yep, at some point Blizzard decided that Druid was going to become Warrior and gave them Warrior cards that were just better. I'm reference to Shield Block and Ferocious Howl.
Yeah.
But anyways, we could probably speak for an hour about the state of Druid in Hearthstone, and so we'll parking lot that conversation for
Yeah.
later. Gaining 10 armor and a draw off that Ferocious Howl. That is
Yep.
insane value.
Wow.
So think of that turn for a moment. Gained 10 armor, drew a card, played a 3/6 taunt with a 3/3 co-minion, and removed the subject 9. I mean, that's the value of Druid these days, and the shenanigans they can pull off in a single turn.
Definitely.
So it looks like
Danny buffing
Danny's,
that Spellstone.
yeah, building that Christmas tree. Someone should tell Danny that it's only September. Christmas isn't until December.
Danny making the wise decisions, though. He knows he's not going to win the game if he trades, so he continues to go face.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say that this is out of reach for Danny because I said it last game, and we saw what happened there. But the Jade player has 10. Jonah has 10 mana on board. He's got this big Jade engine already running. So this will be difficult.
Absolutely. I mean, the only real late game tool that the Secret Hunter has is Deathstalker Rexar. He hasn't gotten that online yet, and the Jade count's starting to run away at 6 already, with more to come. So Certainly the game is starting to run away from Danny a little bit, but I agree. I'm still burnt after last time when we counted Danny out. So only an unwise man would count one of these two players out before the game is concluded.
And even at this point, Danny still has a good chance, but Jonah has spreading plague, so it's kind of a tough situation.
Yes, the famous busted spreading plague. Even at 6 mana, such a strong card in both formats,
Yeah,
really warping and dominating what Druid can do with its game plans.
and this is the nerfed spreading plague that we're talking about.
Indeed. So Jonah comfortably answering Danny's board state. A timely draw of the Deathstalker Rexar. Danny's going to want to get that online immediately because if he has a chance at this game, it's going to be through Zombeast value generation. Also, the 2 damage to the entire board is certainly a nice bonus as well. But
Yeah,
it's
it
the
definitely helped out there.
Danny opting for the biggest Zombeast that he can make, a 13-13 stealth. Certainly a scary prospect for Druid. Druid not really having any good removal, single target removal tools. Fandral is huge. A lot of players have been counting Fandral out of Jade Druid in recent months. I've been in one of the naysayers. The value that you can get out of shuffling and getting a Jade Idol up is incredibly strong in these controlling matchups.
What did they replace it with? I can't even see why anyone ever would replace that. Like, that is just too strong. But Danny does have a lot of damage in the hand.
Yeah, that 13-13 stealth is looking pretty scary right now, and Jonah is down to 15.
Jonah wisely. Oh wow, a timely taunt.
Danny will be able to deal with that taunt and still be able to smash face with that 13, however, but Jonah doing everything he can to make sure that he is in control of the board as we move into the final stages of this game.
Oh, adapt. Did he take adapt?
I missed that, unfortunately. Let's see what we got. So we got Zombies that has Lifesteal, Rush, Battle, and Adapt, a friendly beast.
Oh, he's good.
Yeah.
This might be the game changer right here, depending on what the adapt is. Wind Fury or plus
Oh yeah, if
5,
he
plus
gets
4.
Wind Fury out of that Adapt, that's 26 damage represented on board. Looks like Danny's not going to opt to do it this turn, further setting up his secrets.
It had Rush, right? It did have Rush.
It
Yeah.
does have Rush.
Interesting. I think Danny was thinking that maybe since he top decked the taunt, there wasn't another one. Well, I
And
guess
there's
either
the
point is moot here. He can still clear this board.
Yeah, although I think that you don't want to trade with the stealth Bittertide Hydra. You want that to definitely go face, and the Phleblinus Floop, which I have probably horribly mispronounced, turned into another Jade Behemoth. Generating a 9/9 Jade, and more importantly, putting another taunt on the board. This game's turned into a real slugfest.
This is Danny really patient though. I would have gone for it. Last turn I would have just put it all on the line, but Danny realizing that there wasn't enough damage for lethal on the board,
Yeah.
taking his time.
Wow, we're getting to the bottom of Danny's deck here. Unfortunately, that extra 3/4 taunt is menacingly standing in the way. Danny's
Oh,
probably looking for another inexpensive rush minion.
here we go. Oh,
Oh, no Wind Fury. Not anything that we're looking at. Taunt kind of delays the inevitable, but probably not what what Danny was hoping to get. I have to think he wanted to see Wind Fury off that adapt.
Definitely.
Taking Jonah down to 3.
And he still has secrets around that Jonah hasn't proc, so he's very much in it.
Yeah, although looking at those tall boys that Jonah has, I'd be surprised if he doesn't manage to clear this entire board.
Yeah, he
Sequencing
does
is
have
going to
that.
be important, but um, you know, it, if Danny got that Wind Fury, that would have been game, and unlucky adapts are certainly
Yeah.
frustrating to deal with.
Well, he's debating about going for it right here.
Yeah, then
Oh,
we
wow.
see the full trade as predicted, getting that Jade Spirit online, getting him a
Oh,
10-10. Will Danny get a rush, or more importantly, a charge minion? It does not look like it.
well, if he gets the 4-2 off of the animal companion, you can deal. I didn't know you could deal that to face.
Oh, never
Wow.
mind. Stealing the game once again, and we live to eat our words once more.
Gosh,
Rexar
wow.
showing its value. Unbelievable.
Man,
Another close game. I I think that we're just gonna have to sit here quietly for the final
I think
game.
so too, man. I'm
Oh,
gonna stop talking, man. That was ridiculous. What a
sounds
play.
like our players are immediately getting into game, so
Yeah.
we're gonna jump right in. We are going to see Danny's Reno Mage versus Jonah's Jade Druid.
Well, you know what? Danny has been gambling all match, so why not? Let's just take it to the Reno casino.
So this is going to be a really interesting matchup. Danny has opted to bring the new line of Reno Mage, which runs a one-turn KO strategy with Malagos, Pocket Galaxy, and Antonitis. It's going to be
Oh,
really important for Jonah to armor up as much as possible. This variant of Reno Mage is not running Skulking Geist, so Jonah doesn't
ah,
have to worry about getting his Jade count, rush his Jade count up with those idols. And he may not know that, however. That being said, with the OTK and Malagos out, you can generally do about 50 damage on the high end comfortably. So will Jonah be able to armor beyond 50 in time is going to be the big question. This is going to be a very interesting sequenced matchup. And I have not seen this play out. I think that the greedier Jade Druid here is going to certainly help Jonah's game plan. Really, really interesting matchup. Now, it's worth noting every game I've cast has gone to game 5. I would like to see that streak not broken today, so we'll see if Jonah can identify the deck that Danny's playing and what he needs to do to stay in the game.
definitely. Jonah does have a hill to climb, but he's got a good amount of ramp right now, so he's gonna be able to play that UI very soon.
Yep. And being able to get that armor and fight for the board is what's going to be needed. The key card that Jonah really needs to get going here is Malfurion. He needs to be hammering that for 3 armor a turn as soon as possible. That's
How
going to be
quick? Sorry, how quick can Danny get the combo online? I've actually never seen that combo.
so he needs to get Antonitis and some of
Mhm.
his cheap spells. Um, So he wants to generate about 4 to 5 fireballs. He has the glyph in hand, which would give him 2 fireballs. He took the 1 mana potion that you saw. That's 3. Oh,
Mhm.
but he's opting to play the glyph. Interesting. Uh, he does have coin, um, and the 0 mana Forbidden Flame. So he actually has a lot of his combo pieces in hand. So the idea is that Danny fills his hand with fireballs using cheap spells and Antonitis. Then
Mm-hmm.
he plays Bran and Leyline Manipulator, which discounts those fireballs from 4 mana to 2 mana to 0 mana, duplicating the battle cry. Then Danny plays the Malagos and all his 0 mana fireballs. Pocket Galaxy is not necessary to execute the combo, but certainly makes it easier to perform. Um, so the question is, will Danny be able to draw Antonitis in time and generate enough fireballs? Wow, and the double Aya with Libidinous Floop. Um,
Man, flew good everywhere.
yeah, but a timely draw of the Doomsayer is going to help. Danny looking like he's going to play that Blizzard. Will he follow it up with a Doomsayer? Deck does run Frost Nova, so maybe he could save it for that. Keeping in mind that if he opts to kill the Ayas, they
Nice.
will generate Jades, upping that Jade count. And Danny's already at 11, so, you know, Jonah's really putting on a lot of pressure. We've seen him correctly do this all day. Danny has been able to kind of punch it out, but I think this time, um, unless we see that
I,
Antonitis,
I want to say it. I want to say it, but I said it the last two games,
yeah,
and that didn't happen. So I'm just okay. Yeah, this looks like it's. Yeah, wow.
yeah, but Danny just got Frostlich Jaina online. Frostlich Jaina has a knack of um, stalling games out and gaining insane amounts of life. It is probably my favorite hero, Dark Knight hero, Death Knight hero, excuse me. Um, Jonah opting to shuffle, knowing that he needs to get many Jades up and to continue to pressure. I think that Jonah realizes that there's no Geist, or he would have opted not to shuffle. I think he recognizes what flavor of Reno Mage he's up against, and so it just goes to show you what a good knowledge of your matchups can do for your gameplay. And Jonah is obviously demonstrating that in expert fashion.
Also, he knows that even if there was Geist, uh, there's no way that Danny could play that next turn because he's just on. There's too much pressure on board. He has to play
And
another board wipe or something.
Jonah has 22 armor now, so he's above 50 armor. So even if Danny was able to execute the combo, he wouldn't be able to one turn KO Jonah unless he got 5 fireballs up, which should be very difficult. Right now, Danny has enough for 3, although the Emperor Thorsan can help, possibly 4 with the yeah, and unfortunately, Danny is forced to play his Kazakus potion, which could have generated a fireball. So we're kind of seeing this position that the Reno Mage deck gets into, where it's like you want to conserve resources for your one-turn KO, but you're also facing down an incredibly scary board, and so those combo piece generators also could be used as stabilization. So it's a bit of a curse, right? Do you hold on for the KO or do you go all in? I mean, at 2
Mm.
health, you have to stay alive, and I think we see the concede. Yeah. So,
JonahRah.
but Jonah staying in this, well played. Um, you know, Danny's gonna have to find a win with this Reno Mage deck, and as much as I love the deck, I think it's gonna be the trickiest one to navigate that win with. Although that could match up well against the Paladin. Jonah
Yep.
does also have a Warlock as well, which is a slower deck as well, and this Reno Mage does look for slower
OTK.
decks. Yep. So I think that Danny does have an opportunity to still close this out.
Yeah, he does. Jonah still has an uphill battle ahead of him. I don't think either of those control the Reno or the Paladin deck match up well versus this deck. But uh, Jonah's a great player. He can still do this for sure.
Absolutely, and I'm going to go ahead and signal our 2 players that they can go ahead and start their next game. Um, and we're going to see Danny's Reno Mage. And do you think that Jonah's going to bring his Warlock, or do you think he's going to bring his Paladin?
Um, Well, this is the only deck that Danny can play at this point, so it doesn't matter. He has to win with both of these versus this matchup. So I think he brings the Paladin.
Okay, well, they're getting into games, so we're going to see right now. No, Jonah opting to
And
bring
he
that
brought the
Warlock.
Warlock. I'm gonna stop talking, dude. Like,
No, no, no. I mean, one of the great things about this format is that there's lots of surprises, and that's why it's so much fun because everyone's constantly kept on their toes.
yeah,
And this set is certainly no exception. Danny
D-
drawing Pocket Galaxy, probably happy to see that in his opening hand,
I
uh,
think so too.
along with Kazakis. Pretty reasonable start.
Is Jonah running a Dirty Rat or Demonic Project or anything like that?
He must be running Dirty Rat. Hang on, we can check that. Looks like there is no Dirty Rat and no Demonic Project.
Wow.
So there's Bran. Pairs well with Kazakis, essential for the Leyline OTK combo. Much easier to OTK a Warlock because generally speaking, they won't go much above 30 health.
Yep.
Danny doesn't have to generate as many fireballs with Antonidas. With Malagos, 3 would do the trick, generally speaking. Um, so Danny can play a little bit more aggressively with the resources he has in hand.
Jonah has a nice curve, but I don't know what he can do.
Well, we see he drew Gul'dan, which is a bit of a dead card, but in this type of matchup, without the OTK, generally you want to get your Death Knight up first.
Mm,
Um, so that's certainly something that is an option. We also see the Mal'Ganis in the corner pairing with the Void Collar. Um, you
yep.
know, possibly opportunities to pressure Danny with repeated Mal'Gani, I believe is the correct plural form. Um, Again, I've been wrong every single time I tried to make a prediction. So, both players have dangerous cards in their hands that can certainly win them the game. This doesn't seem, no one seems to have any particular advantage, although Void Collar Mal'Ganis certainly is something that's nice to have this early on.
There goes the Pocket Galaxy.
Coin Pocket Galaxy. Unfortunately, Danny already drew Antonidas, but with Malagos,
Yep.
will make the other part of that combo a lot easier as well.
Oh wow, Anazola. Nice.
So Danny's in a quandary. He's facing down those Void Collars, and he's wondering what Jonah has. Is he going to call his bluff? He'll probably want an answer for whatever Jonah spits out. He must think that there's Void Daddies or a Mal'Ganis in hand, opting to just go face. Um, I think what we're seeing here is Danny trying to realize his OTK plan execution. He knows he's sitting on to Antonidas. He's got a bunch of cheap spells.
Yep.
If he draws Malagos, he can put away the game pretty quickly, pretty easily.
And he has the Zola, so he can just copy it. And
So there's Inkmaster Celia, a new addition to this deck. For those who play it, generally speaking, you want to pair it with Luna's Pocket Galaxy so that you don't have a dead turn tempo-wise when you play the Pocket Galaxy. Kind of nice to see this card seeing play. It was the legendary from the Cabal that saw the least amount of play and really finding a nice home in this deck. Danny able to play the Blizzard without losing tempo there, getting a 5/5 on board, certainly nice. Opting not to kill those Void Collars, very clever.
Jonah can Hellfire if he wants to kill those Void Callers, but Man, I don't know. I like the board state for both players right now. I think Danny was facing a lot of pressure, but by freezing this board and
We're going to see
killing
the
those two
Defile.
intrusive mixers. Oh, nice draw right there.
Oh yeah, getting that on curve is certainly the draws have been kind to Danny this game. But I think the card that Danny's really looking for is that Malagos. Well, that's nice to see. A one
Yeah,
mana
that's a
Reno
nice card too.
Jackson and the Polymorph Boar, probably thinking about taking away Mal'Ganis, removing a lot of pressure from the board. Again, like I said, Danny doesn't need more than 3 fireballs generated, so he is able to play that Polymorph Boar without um, taking away his potential for a one-turn KO. We see Jonah digging through his deck, looking for answers. Snap playing that Rin, realizing that probably if he can destroy
Wow.
Danny's deck before he completes his combo, that's probably his best shot at taking this game off of him. Not a game that you would see on ladder by any stretch, and why I'm so grateful to be participating in a part of this league. These are the types of games that I love to see.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely refreshing to see something different than Wild Growth Nourish Biology Project game is over. Juicy Psych Melon, we're done.
We don't talk about juicy psych melons around here. Oh dear, so Jonah's opting to cube the Void Lord. Probably we're going to see Danny Polly the Rin denying
Yeah,
that win con from Jonah. I don't know how much he thinks this matters. Certainly something I'm going to ask in the post. I view that as being a potential win condition, although it is slow. It would take at least 3 more turns. How many cards does Danny have in his deck? He has
Dan's
11
got like
cards
11
left.
cards left.
So it's kind of a roll of the dice to try and eliminate the combo. I mean, for all Jonah knows, he's holding on to it already. But I think we're going to see Gul'dan get brought online next turn. That's a prediction I feel comfortable in making. And that's why I'll be wrong. But
What is this 5-mana guy? Oh, he has a Doom Guard in hand.
So here's the Antonidas. Interesting choice to Zola it. We're going to see Danny play his cheap spells, getting his fireballs online. One thing to keep in mind is that he doesn't have Bran or Leyline to discount them, but it may not really matter.
Yeah,
I think he has to realize that Jonah will probably be able to heal. Excuse me, he does have the brand sitting in the far left corner of his hand, so really just looking for Leyline at this point. We've got 18 damage in hand with those 3 fireballs, or 33 if we see Mal'Ganis. Jonah realizing what's at foot here and getting some aggressive options on, healing up to 29. Tenny better draw Malagos next turn, but even if he does, he needs at least 2 turns to get the combo going, and we've got that cube lock style board that is going to really pressure Danny's game, even with the Reno. I'm not sure it's going to be enough.
well, Dan's got like a 10% chance, slightly less than 10% chance of drawing into the Mally. But he needs Leyline, right? That's what he's looking for?
Yeah, so with Bran Leyline, those fireballs become 0. But you still, and Malagos will cost 1 if he draws it. So in theory, if he could get both in hand, he could execute that all in 1 turn. But he needs to draw into those 2 pieces, and the problem with these combos is that they're really cool when they're pulled off. Banana pulled it off in week 1, Banana Ramek. But if a key piece is sitting at the bottom of your deck, it eliminates or it prevents you from executing that game plan, which is why, and I hate to bring up Psych Melon again, that's why cards like
Mhm.
Psych Melon are so busted. Because
Yep,
yes, they draw you cards, but they draw you specific cards. And it just makes these explosive strategies so much more consistent
definitely.
and frustrating to play against. Well, there goes the Potion of Poly into the most desirable target that I think Jonah would have liked it to hit. Although a potential water elemental for Danny there. Cube
Wish I
Walk is
clicked
still a pretty scary deck. It's fallen out of favor somewhat, but it still has such an ability to apply pressure and generate value. I wonder why we don't see as much of it as maybe we've have on ladder. Maybe it's like Questro. It kind of falls out of favor, and then will crystallize and return to the forefront.
That's a good one.
Yeah, pun intended. Jonah getting to the bottom of his deck. Danny getting that ice block up. Really critical to stalling out to hopefully execute that game plan. Um, Jonah does have 33 health, which or is that hang on a minute. Yeah, 33 health exactly. So those 3 fireballs, if they deal 11 damage apiece, would be enough to close this game out. But with that block being popped, unless the combo gets executed, oh my goodness, and there we
Wow.
go. Unbelievable.
Wow,
Stalling the game out to
33.
deal exact lethal. There's the combo. No ley line
Wow.
manipulator needed. A tick from the Emperor is all that was required. And Danny's going to take this series 3-1,
Wow.
barely eking it out. All games, unbelievable. Um, well done. Always finding his out and his win condition. Danny, oh, sorry there. Lost you. There we go. Danny
Man.
showing why he is one of the premier wild players, always finding his outs. Not to disparage against Jonah at all. Jonah being one of the best players I have ever had the pleasure of watching play. What a set.
Yeah, I think Jonah played exceptionally well too. Like he always put the pressure on. He never really overcommitted. Like I think he made the right plays all the time. But
Yep.
Danny just very, very patient. Took some risks. At some points in many of the games. He made like crucial decisions to maybe delay and be conservative for one more turn, and then those decisions help win those games for him. So man, props to both. That's such a great set. That's really good to watch. Really nice to watch.
Yeah, some really cool decks and some really interesting games. And unfortunately, Jonah was not able to take it to Game 5, thus breaking the curse. I think this is my 5th or 6th game cast in this league, and it's the first one that didn't go to its conclusion. But still, one of the most explosive and exciting sets that I've had the pleasure of observing. So I'm going to go
Yes,
ahead and see if I can get those 2 gentlemen into chat so that we can discuss what we just saw. So stand
sure.
by.
Just to recap, in the first match, we had Danny playing Kingsbane Rogue versus Jonah's, I believe it was Control Paladin. And the Control Paladin put a lot of pressure early, but Danny was able to stabilize and take that game. Uh, then he was able to take game 2 with his Hunter deck versus Jade Druid, and he was facing down some monster Jades. Uh, but he was able to be patient, get a big 13/13 stealth guy from Rexar, and able to find the lethal there. In game 3, he lost game 3. Um, his Hunter lost to, I believe it was Jonah's Warlock. And then, oh, no, no.
So Ken, I'm going to just go ahead and quickly drop this call and
Oh, sure.
create a 4 group call on the other chat. Stand by. We're going to get Danny and Jonah live with us. All right. So I am
Yo.
back with
Hello, hello.
Jonah, Danny, and Ken. Are y'all here? Sounds like you are. Or not?
Hello, Jonah? Jonah? Hello?
Hey, Ken.
Jonah said he had to go.
Oh,
Oh.
did he? Oh, that's unfortunate. Well, thanks for hopping on for a quick moment, Danny. That was such a fun set to watch. Such a heartbreaker for Jonah. You managed to befuddle Ken and I every single game. We had it basically called for Jonah, and yet you managed to pull it out, playing to your outs, squeezing a win. Um, really, you put on a real clinic, and I have to say that I'll be rewatching those VODs and taking notes. That was quite a display of Hearthstone acrobatics.
Yeah, you really got to play to your outs, especially in some of the decks, like especially the Reno Mage, where it's like you have a bunch of pieces. It's a Swiss Army knife, so you got to go and tackle it at whatever you can. So I was really lucky with that top deck Malagos at the end. Jonah had me down to 1 life. I was about to die. But I was most shocked about the Paladin matchup. Because I knew he brought Paladin, and I just hope my Kingsbane Rogue should have beaten the other 2 decks fairly well. But I'm like, I hope he doesn't queue the Paladin up first, and then he queued it up. But I was able to stabilize there too, which is a shocker. But thankfully, he wasn't playing like an aggro Pally, because if it was an aggro Pally, he would have had me like within the first 3 or 4 turns. Didn't have enough pressure.
So let's talk about that game for a moment. I think what struck me quite a bit in the first game, Kingsbane Rogue versus Control Paladin, was how liberally you used your vanishes and saps before you stabilized. I think a common mistake that a player such as myself would make would be to think, well, I got to hold on to these resources for later on. But you identified that it was kind of now or never to play those cards, and you were rewarded for that aggressive line of play. Does that feel counter to what maybe your instincts would have you do, or maybe you can discuss your thought process there a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, well, I initially kept Vanish prep in my opening hand. And I did that because I thought that he was aggro pally at the start, because I thought he should build some like mech variant, but he did build a mech variant, but it was a lot slower than I expected. Um, so typically against aggro pally, you want to just keep removing stuff until you can get a big Kingsbane and then just turn the board and whack him in the face. Um, so the big thing that you're really concerned about is your health total as Kingsbane Rogue, and until you reach your Leeching Poison and weapon buff, you really got to keep the board clear. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of trying to clear as efficiently, but not being too afraid to pull the trigger.
In the second
Yeah, I
game,
mean,
oh, sorry, Ken, go on.
oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, it looked like you were using all your removal in the early, like, first 5 or 6 turns, and you're running out of gas. You only had the Shadow Steps in hand, but once you hit the Cold Light Oracle, you know, you got the draw engine going. You pull those Leeching Poison or the Leeching Poison. You had a huge weapon at that point.
I
And
even milled a couple of his cards. You never see that against Paladin. You never see Paladin having cards being milled.
Yeah, definitely it was an interesting and fun list from Jonah's perspective. Probably figured that if you had Rogue, probably would bring an odd Rogue, and so thinking that a Control Paladin versus an odd Rogue might be a reasonably decent matchup. So kind of playing some mind games, plans within plans, so to speak. The,
like, who
this
would ever bring Kingsbane to the Into the Wild Hearthstone tourney?
uh-oh, shots fired.
Uh-oh. Well, hey, no, you got to think that Kingsbane Rogue has seen no play since the expansions come out because of Druid.
Yep.
And I mean, I even checked my list. I'm running double Dirty Rat, and I'm also running an Evasion. So if I was to run up against the fabled Star Aligner Druid, I would have game. There's actually a game where I played against Slizzle, and it's on his YouTube, where I was able to win the game because I got an evasion out on the turn that he was going to go in for his Starliner. It only deals 7 damage, and then I'm immune for the rest of the turn. And then I was able to go and Blade Flurry his board away.
Oh, the Hunter game, you played the 1313 stealth, and then you created the rush minion that adds the the guy that can give like adapt.
Yeah.
You opted to continue the board instead of playing it right there, and I guess in hindsight it was a good idea because he didn't get +3 damage or whatever. Are you
Yeah, well,
worried
I
at
wanted
that
to be
point?
able to get through. I think there was a Jade Behemoth there, and I wanted to be able to use my resources as efficiently as possible at the end because it's going to always come down to can I get the extra 1 or 2 damage. Um, so I felt that I didn't really know what he had left in his hand, and he actually had a gloop. So it was lucky that I saved that. Uh, because I was able to use the lifesteal rush guy to go in and kill the gloop that was the 3/4 taunt as well. But yeah, that game was really the Mossy Horror really came. Uh, it was very useful in that matchup because I knew that he was bringing Druid and he was bringing Warlock. So as a hunter, you want to be able to get through the spreading plague, and you want to be able to get through like any of the Void Lord, the Void Callers. So that's something that I felt was really good in the matchup, and especially against Paladin too. If you're expecting aggro Paladin,
Yep.
Mossy Horror is a good tech card, but man, I drew into that one very at the exact right time.
And you opted to
Oh
run Mossy
man, yeah,
Horror
that's
over
awesome.
Professor Putricide, right? That seems to be a fairly common tech choice in Standard, not so much in Wild, but Spreading Plague being as prevalent as it is in Wild as it is in Standard, for those who are laddering with that Secret Hunter list, may want to consider Mossy Horror. I think there's enough favorable matchups with it that even on ladder, it seems like a reasonable choice that you get good value off of a fairly consistent basis.
Yeah, and a lot of your minions are, besides the mad scientist, everything that you're going to play is going to be greater than 2 attack. Maybe the secret keeper if you don't buff it up high enough, but your minions are typically going to stay alive.
So the last game, and by far my favorite, the Reno Mage versus Control Warlock. At one point, Jonah played Rin, and I wish he was here because I want to ask him what his thoughts were on that. I viewed that maybe incorrectly as a win condition for Jonah, because if he could destroy your deck before you drew Malagos, he was maybe not completely in the clear, but probably in a better position to not get blown out. And he played Cube, and instead of cubing Rin, he opted to cube his Void Lord. I wonder if he knew what he was playing against, so I'd have to think that he probably thought you were sitting on combo and he just wanted to exert maximum pressure. Were you afraid of that, Rin, or was it kind of at that point, a non-issue because you were so far into game?
Oh yeah, I was definitely afraid of that. I did leave it up for a turn, which I was very afraid of. Um, I couldn't do anything. I had to deal with whatever. I don't really remember what else was on the board, but I had to deal with something, and I'm like, I'm not going to be able to because I drew the polymorph the turn after that he played the Rin. And I'm like, I don't have enough mana to play the polymorph. I'll have to wait until next turn to do that. And I was like, I hope he doesn't have Hellfire to clear it. Um, but he decided not to. One of the things you have to think about is that you have to be playing the seals every single turn, and you just can't do things during those turns. So, what is it? It's you waste 3 turns to get that off over the period of the game, and I think that we were just going back and forth on board that he would be able to push through and like kill me quicker than 3 turns.
Right.
So that I think in his mind the quicker route to lethal was probably not that. Although I bet he wishes he changed that up, seeing how deep Malagos was in my deck. But I was able to get the Emperor on the fireballs, which was pretty good.
Yeah, I was talking a lot about the game plan of that deck in the commentary, how you generally want to generate fireballs, Bran, Leyline, and then one hit KO with Malagos. But Emperor is also another route to victory. I mean, getting those with the Pocket Galaxy, getting those fireballs down to 3 apiece, with the one mana Malagos is certainly a line of play that I didn't even consider, and I think that's why Pocket Galaxy is such a cool inclusion in that deck. So finding a really neat path to victory, I tip my hat to you, sir.
Yeah, oh, it's definitely a fun deck. I believe this is EK Designer's list. I may have made a couple of changes to tech for this matchup. I wouldn't be surprised if Jonah did the same with his Reno lock list, because he knew I wasn't bringing Druid. So you probably don't want to play, like, I don't know, you don't want to play the Death, no, not the Death Knight, the Dirty Rat or the Demonic Project. So I'm assuming that he teched for the matchups because he knew the classes that I had, and I teched for his matchup specifically for his classes.
It
I mean, we
felt like
saw
there
that too.
was, yeah, it felt like there was some I don't want to say mind games, but definitely what I've noticed in some of the wild tournament gameplay that I've seen is that there's this race to the bottom, or maybe race to the top is more apt, where lists tend to get a little bit greedier to outbulk or outgreed your opponent, and so you'll see people starting to play Baleful Banker and Reno lists, or um, you know. Uh, Rin, for example, in that Q block list. So it's certainly an interesting dynamic, and something that's fun to see, because it's a nice change from the drudgery of ladder.
Yeah, definitely.
Those are quick games.
That's the whole thing about tournaments. You get to go in and you know what your, at least in this format, you know what classes your opponent's bringing. So it's like narrows down the field to what you want to bring out of your classes. And the wild format's just so nice that there's so many ways that you can tech your decks that you can really have game against all types of things. And if you know how to deck build, you're going to be able to go through and try to take advantage of some of that stuff.
So I have one last question for the Reno Mage list. Ink Master, yay or nay?
In this list, yes. You're playing Luna's Pocket Galaxy, and you guys saw the turn where I Ink Mastered into a Blizzard when Ink Master costed 1. I think this list is not good on the general ladder. You're probably going to want to be playing just a standard because of Druid, right? You don't
Yep.
want to be playing something that does a limited amount of damage with the fireballs. You want to be able to do something that's a little bit more like board control-y, and then like settle the board down and then just kill your opponent through pressure. But I had a feeling that Jonah wasn't going to be bringing Starliner Druid. I actually thought he was going to bring Togwaggle. So that's how I built my decks in case he was going to play Togwaggle Druid. But he surprised me and played Jade Druid. So all the disruption effects were wrong. I wasn't able to put Geist in my deck.
Right. Cool. Yeah, because I've seen some people make riffs on EK's deck, and some include Ink Master, some don't. So I was just curious what your thoughts were on that, because I think it's a pretty neat inclusion. Not losing tempo on the Pocket Galaxy turn is, I don't know, seems to me kind of huge, but I'm hardly an expert in these matters, so.
I was a big proponent of Ink Master in general. Before, like maybe 2 or 3 expansions ago, when Reno Mage was being played. But I think that it has more utility when you're playing some of these bigger spells like Luna's Pocket Galaxy. But yeah, I think against aggro, it's a little bit better too, just because you're gonna be able to play for a little bit more tempo with some of these clears.
Awesome. Well, I could talk to you for hours, Danny, but I feel like I've taken so much of your time already. Ken, do
Oh,
you have
no
any
worries.
other questions for Danny before we start to wrap?
No, I'm still speechless. I can't believe what happened in those first 2 games. It was crazy. So those are awesome games though. It's great. Always a pleasure to watch Danny play. He's so patient. Like I don't know, it's so weird. Like I feel like in the beginning of the matches, like you're real liberal with a lot of the use of like removal or whatever, well, depending on the matchup, right? And then towards the end of the game, you get real conservative to the outs in situations where you need
Mhm.
to play to the outs, but also not risking the game like right then and there if you could live like another turn, right? So, and I think just a sign of a really consistent, strong player, and he definitely proved it today because Jonah brought it, man. He put a lot of pressure on the board in every game, and he withstood all of that. It was great games.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if our predictions rung true, Jonah would have taken the series 3-0.
Yeah, you gotta always play to your outs, and then sometimes figuring out what those outs are difficult, especially in decks like the Reno Mage list, where it's like, oh, I'm not going to be able to have enough time to brand Leyline Manipulator. I have to play Emperor Thorson, or even realizing that I have a free turn. I need to get these fireballs with Archmage Antonitis right now, so that by the time I draw into my Malagos, I'll be able to have discounted them somehow. And then there was one point where he played Gul'dan, and I know that the fireballs did 33 damage, and I'm like, great, I'm gonna have to go and ping him twice because he's gonna have 35 health, and I'm gonna pull this off. But luckily, he played his the Kobold Librarian, so I didn't have to worry about that. But that was something I was thinking of once he played Gul'dan. He's like, all right, I gotta spend my mana efficiently over these next turns, so I'm gonna be able to fit in 2 pings, so I'll be able to kill him.
Wow, wow, I would never even
Definitely,
thought of it.
yeah, didn't really think about, like, we were talking a little bit about the health total and the consideration of the one turn KO, but when Jonah did play the Librarian, we didn't even think to mention that 1 point of damage, or sorry, those 2 points of damage that the Librarian deals could have been so consequential. Those are the small details that one must keep track of to play to their outs. So
Certainly.
well done. So I think we're going to go ahead and start to wrap. Before I make the closing announcements, etc. Ken Sanity, do you have anything that you wish to promote or highlight? A Twitter, a stream, etc.
No, not really. I mean, if you want to hear me babble about some stuff that's probably incorrect, you can follow me on twitter.com/kinsanityhs or catch me streaming once in a while on twitch.tv/kinsanity.
Awesome. And Danny, anything that you wish to promote? I know there's that brawl happening next weekend. Maybe you can chat a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So next Saturday at believe it's 1 p.m. PST, 4 p.m. EST, we are having the Boomsday Brawl, which is an invitational one-trick event where we invited a couple of pros and we're going to play a little bit of a tournament. I believe it's going to be on Slizzle's stream, and we got some special rules where every deck has to have 7 Boomsday cards. So that's going to be really interesting. It's not going to be an exact carbon copy of the ladder. You're going to get to see some interesting deck building there. I'm going to be playing in that, so I'm actually building the decks after this right now. But it's going to be really exciting, and I think we have some all-star casters coming in. It's going to be a fun time. So if you want to check that out, it's next weekend on Saturday, 4 p.m. EST, 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And as for me, you can follow me on Twitch, Danny Donuts _HS. I actually got my thousandth Twitter follower today, so I'm pretty
Congratulations.
excited about that. Um, and also, I do the Well Met podcast. So if you guys want to listen to that, we're on iTunes. You can just search Hearthstone. I think we're the third one down under the Hearthstone podcasts, but I get to talk with Ray C and J.R. Cook, and we get to talk about Hearthstone all the time. I'm the wild representative on the show, so I get to go and shock their minds with all these crazy decks like Starliner Druid and things that like they for the first 2 weeks they didn't believe me that that was a solid deck, but that seems like that happens every expansion. Like when Togwaggle Druid came out, like I introduced that as a deck, and they're like, "There's no way Togwaggle Druid's like an actual thing. That's totally a meme." And then they started seeing it in standard, and they're like, "Oh, maybe you were right." And then so I'm coming in with Starliner, and they're like, "Oh no, we don't want to see this in standard."
Maybe you were right. That doesn't seem like a sure sign of contrition there. But yeah, it does seem that a lot of wild strategies have been making their way into standard. Togwaggle and Malagos are great examples. I shudder to think that Melons and Starliners will find its way into standard, but crazier things have happened, huh?
On that note, like, do you think, okay, Starliner, I a way to play this in standard at all, but Psych Melon, I think, is a card that could really like speed up like Togwaggle decks in standard. I'm surprised that Psych Melon doesn't have the kind of influence that it does in wild. I mean, I know we don't get the Avion and Kun, but there's still a lot of.
The big issue that they run into is they can't, like you said, they don't have Aviana Coon, so you need to be playing that Dream Petal Florist, and then at that point it's like you're playing Dream Petal Florist, Togwaggle, and then Azalina. So like your Psych Melon doesn't do the wild thing where just drawing your whole combo. You still have to draw into some of the other pieces, so it's just not as consistent. I did see someone. I was watching some standard tournaments this weekend, and I saw someone bring a Malagos Druid at, I believe it was PAX West, and they were running Psych Melon. They were playing it up against Just Saying. It was like the pros versus Joe's tournament, so it was just some normal guy who qualified through, got to play against the pros, and he was playing Psych Melon in the list. So I was pretty excited to see that, but it seems like it was a homebrew deck of his because all the casters were they said they actually referenced wild because I knew the casters and they're like, hey, we were talking with some wild players and they said Psych Melon's absolutely broken in wild.
Well, we can only hope that it breaks standards so that maybe they do something about it. But until that happens, I think that we better get our ad money ready if it becomes as oppressive as Naga did. But for now, anyways, I suppose there's still an opportunity for the metagame to develop further. So we'll see how the next few weeks develop. I'll be uncharacteristically optimistic and say that hopefully it doesn't continue to be as oppressive as some might suspect.
Yeah, people just need to learn how to tech their decks right. I don't even think that I have a full grasp on how to tackle the deck. So I think that it'll after a couple more weeks, we'll be able to get into a position where the deck isn't as just high roll winny as it is. You need to be able to the meta just needs to adjust around it.
And the wild meta, as wise folks have said, often takes longer to develop just because, we have not as many participants, and so strategies take a little bit longer to bubble up to the surface. So fingers are crossed that it won't require drastic action from Blizzard to resolve. I will say that my experiences playing against it in the last couple days have been pretty dejecting. Even with very aggressive strategies like Odd Rogue, I'd still find myself getting blown out on turn 6 and turn 7. So it's pretty rough, but so never say die. All right, well, we'll leave it there. Before I go, I just want to invite all of the viewers to check out the Into the Wild HS channel on YouTube. And if you haven't already, please subscribe. Looking to get 100 subscribers so that we can get a dedicated URL for that channel. So if you're watching this VOD, hit the subscribe button. You have no excuse. Other than that, there are going to be matches all week and the One Trick Brawl next Saturday. So lots of great stuff happening. So stay tuned for that. We'll go ahead and leave it there. So I want to thank Danny and Jonah for playing a great set for us today, and Ken Sanity for putting up with me and casting with me. It was a great honor. And stay tuned for more games this week. Take care, everyone.